By Farlap, twice. By Manfred, by Chatham, twice. And in the war years, the great mares Tranquil Star and Flight would each win it twice. In 1959, a little chestnut won it, No Home. He turned out to be nothing less than the greatest stallion to leave these shores since Carbine. In America, he sired winners by the 100, founded a sub-branch of the Star Kingdom dynasty, and produced a son who was champion North American sire. In Australia, No Home was always overshadowed by his older brother, Todman, but not on this day at the Valley, when he broke a 16-year-old time record in the Cox Plate. He was only about 15'2" and lightly made, but forget that. Look at the stride. It's like elastic. And look too at the immaculate style of Neville Selwood. If No Home was our finest export since Old Jack, Tulloch was our finest racehorse since Farlap, and still is. 50,000 came to the Valley to see him in 1960. He was coming back as a 6-year-old after illness had stolen 2 seasons from him. He not only won, but smashed the Australian 10-furlong record. And as he passed the post, hats, hundreds of hats, flew in the air. Les Carline proposed the toast at the 1986 Cox Plate dinner.
And why did those hats go up? You had to say to yourself, it couldn't be the punt because Tulloch was 6-4 on. It was the race, and it was the horse, and it was the knowledge that some sort of legend had been made here at Moonee Valley.
And it says something about the Cox Plate, that race. Second was Doulagiri. He won the following year's Cox Plate, then went to France and sired a St. Leger winner in his first crop. Fourth was Sky High. He went to America and sired a Horse of the Year.
As I said a while back, the perception of this race's greatness has come mostly in the last decade. One only had to look at this year's media coverage to realize the race is being seen for what it really is, the Championship of Australia. At last, it's being seen as a race in its own right, and not as a stepping stone to something else, except perhaps the Japan Cup. At last, its significance to the breeding industry is clear. Any well-bred entire who wins the Cox Plate here is guaranteed a harem. Much of the race's rise to prominence has been the brilliance of its staging, and I guess a little has to do with the stake. In 1986, it was 3/4 of the Melbourne Cup stake. In Tulloch's year, it was less than 1/4 of the Cup stake. Anyway, the race has arrived. It works in its own right. Never has it worked so well as it did in 1986. It was billed as a 2-horse war months in advance, and that's just the way it turned out. So let's look at the events which brought the players to the barrier at this spot at 2:55 on the afternoon of the last Saturday in October.
This is Bonecrusher. Tobin Bronze won his first Cox Plate in 1966. As a horse, he was so good to look at, he might have been cast in bronze. Graham Hegney trained him.
He wasn't a tall horse, but he was a very thick-set, solid horse, and a beautiful coloured horse. His name was Tobin Bronze, and he really had a bronze through his coat, and like he was a magnificent horse to do anything with, but a real strong, a bulldog horse, you know.
In 1967, Tobin Bronze won the Toorak and the Caulfield Cup and was sold to America. That's what made Cox Plate Day 1967 so special. It was the swan song of an idol.
Last run in Australia was
Could
in
he
the
do
Cox
it?
Plate. He leads on the corner from Terrific Volition on the rails, Merryweather in the centre, Craftsman the outside, and Carloom's Pride. Given full rein, Tobin Bronze dashes to the lead in the straight, and amongst great cheering from the large crowd at Moonee Valley, Tobin Bronze's last run in Australia is a success. Terrific can't stay with him, and then a gap to Craftsman, and Tobin Bronze once again showing what a great champion he is, scores in effortless style in the Cox Plate at Moonee Valley.
Well, to be honest, you're a man that they say you shouldn't cry, but there was tears in my eyes, and women came round crying, could I have a little bit of tail, could I have a little bit of hair? I think Bill Collins, I don't know whether he's still of the same opinion, but Bill always said it was the greatest ovation he'd ever heard in Australian racing. It was absolutely fantastic.
Another trainer who wasn't supposed to cry had a tear in his eye in 1972.
And as I came back here into stall number 1, the crowds here at Moonee Valley, they absolutely erupted. Amount of responsibility that if I was to do anything wrong in that race, just what it would mean to that great horse and his career if he was to get beaten on that particular occasion.
Here's Gunsynd hooked to the outside, followed then by Trident and Magnifique, followed by the Fixer and Gay Icarus. Up by the 500, Torto in front, but the 3-year-old Longfellow at his girth, and here's Gunsynd 3 deep, about to tackle them, and Longfellow and Gunsynd have swept to the lead near the turn. They're followed by All Shot out very wide, running on from Old Icon, Torto, Magnifique, Abdul, Gay Icarus. It's Longfellow and Gunsynd on the turn together from Magnifique and All Shot. Longfellow's gone. It's Gunsynd in front with All Shot coming at him from Magnifique. Gunsynd's under the whip, but he's holding All Shot. All Shot trying hard, but the great grey Gunsynd in front. He's too good. What a champion. The crowd roars and Gunsynd wins a length to All Shot. Magnifique third.
We all loved Gunsynd, just as we loved Tobin Bronze. Part of it was because he was grey. Most of it was because he was great. Because if there'd been a film about him, they would have called it True Grit. And a little of it was because Gunsynd was such a character.
Normally, what would happen on Cox Plate Day, the course announcer, Joe Brown, as we get to about this point, would announce the horses as they're coming onto the track, and the public would respond accordingly. And especially for Gunsynd, irrespective of what race it was, the crowd would applaud him. But as we walked to this particular stage, Joe Brown, he hadn't made the announcement. Apart from a few people just in this area, they'd clapped him a bit. And being the old actor that he really was, I was walking, I got to this point with the clerk of the course, and he just stopped, obviously waiting for the reaction. These stands were packed, and he was waiting for this reaction. And then next minute, the clerk of the course said to me, "Come on, Roy, we've got to get going." And I said, "Well, I can't." I said, "I can't get him to move." And by this time, old Gunsynd, he's there, and he's looking back up into the crowd. That was probably one of the highlights of that great horse's career, and it's a day in my life, and I'm sure in the Australian racing public's life, that we will never forget. We'll never forget Bonecrusher and Waverley Star, and we will never forget the great Gunsynd on that particular occasion.
Next year's winner was all grit too, Taj Rossi. What a 3-year-old he was. In the spring of 1973, he competed 8 times in 11 weeks for 7 wins. Like Nohome and Tobin Bronze, he went to America as a stallion, and from his first crop produced a stakes millionaire. He came home to sire Oaks winners like Taj Eclipse. Now he's dead, but we'll all remember him for this.
Up the side, 700 out, and Like a Lover 3 lengths in front of Strike again out after it. Arnally's gone, coming into it again, Millfleurs, and here's Swell Time around the outside with Taj Rossi. They were followed by Zambari and Glengowan making a run and a long gap to All Shot. With 400 to go, Like a Lover's gone, Swell Time hit the front. And led by a length on the turn to Taj Rossi tackling at Zambari, and here's Glengowan out wide putting in his claim. They're followed by Craig Wynn and Strike again. On the turn, Swell Time joined by Taj Rossi, 2 lengths to Zambari. Glengowan getting hampered by Zambari. It's Taj Rossi and Swell Time clear. 2 lengths to Zambari and Glengowan off the course. Taj Rossi ahead in front, Swell Time coming at it again from Zambari. Taj Rossi and Swell Time stride for stride. Taj Rossi ahead in front, and he's won it. A half head to Swell Time.
Battle Heights lives on in a paddock in New Zealand. He was pretty tough too, what they call a campaigner. 7 times he crossed the Tasman, and he was still racing at 10. He gave Gary Willits his first Melbourne winner in that 74 Cox Plate.
Battle Heights last eased off the fences, starting to make some ground, and Igloo looked hopeless. At the 600 plus, taken on strongly now. By on the outside, Upik and Citadel. Pyramid about 6 deep. Tara's Bulba trying to get a run in the centre, and they were followed then by Battle Heights on the outside, and Bellotta on the turn plus still in front. Getting a run, Kenmark now for the first time. He's got a dream run. Tara's Bulba there with Bellotta and then Upik, but Kenmark went to the lead. Igloo going for the rails run. He might beat them all, the old fellow. Kenmark the leader with Igloo out after him from Bellotta and Tara's Bulba. Igloo put his head in front on the fence, but here's Battle Heights from last. Battle Heights swamping them, dash to the lead, and Battle Heights has won it. Tara's Bulba second.
Surround. Now she's nearly white, a mum in a New Zealand paddock. In 1976, she was steel grey, and being hailed as nothing less than the greatest 3-year-old filly in Australian history. Jeff Murphy picked her out of a weanling paddock on a New Zealand stud. She was a little thing, but he liked her. In all, she won 12 races as a 3-year-old. She won the Caulfield Guineas and the Eastern States Oaks Treble. In between, she won the Cox Plate. And this was the first day she was hailed as a true champion. She broke the race record. She was the first filly to win the race. A real racehorse, this one, with not much family loyalty. Watch her shoulder aside Purple Patch, who happened to be her half-brother.
Up the side with 600 metres to go. It's Unaware, a half to Elton, a half to Purple Patch. One to Surround on the fence, a half Tara's Bulba, he's gone. How now commencing her run, and then perhaps followed behind those horses then on the inside by Northbridge Lad from Better Draw. Unaware booted away at the 400, 2 lengths to Surround out after him. It's coming at him quickly, and they were followed by Purple Patch, and next is How Now. Surround raced to Unaware. The 3-year-olds look to have it between them from Better Draw. Surround put her head in front as they straighten from Unaware under the whip, and then Better Draw, How Now and Kiwi Can. But Surround, the mighty champion, is striding right away, and Surround's won it by 3 lengths. Second place.
And here's another real racehorse, Dulcify. Sometimes we search for superlatives in vain. How do you describe this? Watch Daylight, 7 lengths of it. Flash home for second.
Oh, Dulcify let go as race to the lead. Shivery's getting off the fence, but Dulcify's going to have a big lead on it. At the 400, Dulcify shot away 2.5 lengths, imposing. Then Shivery under the whip from Arbor Shane and Gypsy Kingdom. But Dulcify well clear. Brent Thompson going for his 4th Cox Plate, and he's got it. He's home, Dulcify. He's 6 lengths in front of Shivery, and then Arbor Shane imposing, stopping. Dulcify's won by a minute, and that's the way he might win the Melbourne Cup.
He didn't win the Cup. He died running in it. Dulcify. What might have been. Over and over, the Cox Plate produces those witching moments. One horse produced more than any other because he won the Cox Plate more times than any other.
Witching moments like Kingston Town, lurching and crabbing. His mind making appointments his body couldn't keep. But he won, the King. He won 3 times. And he won, I think, because of some divine plan which seems to surround the Cox Plate. Kingston Town was the best horse in the race. The Cox Plate, I believe, is the best race in Australia.
All Kingston Town's wins were different. In 1980, after proving he didn't know his near leg from his off at other Melbourne tracks, he fairly skated around the valley.
400, and it's our Paddy Boy, Prince Ruling and Yurtis, but Kingston Town's cantering. We're going to see the real one today. Then 3 lengths wide, Tangaroo running on well from Family of Man. On the turn, and Kingston Town cruised up to our Paddy Boy, took the lead. In the centre, Prince Ruling, and then Yurtis and White Tangaroo. But the real Kingston Town's going to street them, and Kingston Town's gone on to win by 4 lengths.
In 1981, Kingston Town was pocketed, uncomfortable, wrong-footed. But then, in one of racing's moments of pure magic, he came out with all the poise of a good-natured drunk leaving a bar and did this.
He's not responding, Kingston Town. On the turn, it's been Binga from Lorman, 2 lengths to Kingston Town, now getting out from Silver Bounty. Kingston Town's got out, he's pulled the whip on him, tackling Lorman quickly. Kingston Town raced to Lorman from Silver Bounty. It's Kingston Town, Lorman in front, Kingston Town wearing him down. He'll win, the $1 Million Man's won it.
Wrong-footed, yes, but it was glory. It was as if Kingston Town had radar in his head, as if he knew just where the line was. As he returned to scale, shades of Tulloch, Tobin Bronze, and Gunsynd. Few thought he could do it again in 1982. The radar was as good as ever, but clearly the horse had lost much of his zip. The accurate one had a small doubt.
A length and a half, Lorman. Kingston Town can't win. Then LA Bajou and the 3-year-old Grosvenor running on. My Axman took the lead from Fearless Pride. Grosvenor coming down the outside is after them. My Axman in front. Grosvenor and Kingston Town flashing. He might win yet, the champ. Grosvenor took the lead. Oh, Kingston Town swamping them. What a run. Kingston Town wins it next to Grosvenor.
40 minutes later, the scenes were repeated, this time for Manicato, who passed the $1 million mark by winning the Moya.
Got him. Manicato's going to get the million. I think he took the lead from Rancher. Racer Sharp running on well from Avatar, but Manicato's cracked the million.
Moonee Valley has never known a day like that. What racecourse in the world has? And in death, Manicato has returned to the scene of his triumph.
Then a length further back, LA.
In 1983, there was argument about who should be Horse of the Year. Strawberry Road tended to settle things with the authority of this win in the Cox Plate.
600 out, they pack up and fine offer bolted round the outside to go to the lead. He's had no luck, but he's charged to the lead. From Handsome Seattle, Perfect Bliss, Come to London's gone. Strawberry Road trying to get out of a pocket. Here's Sadapa hooked 4 or 5 wide with Mr. McGinty. 2 to Tresaro, LA Bijou, Albany Bay. Emancipation's last on the corner. Fine offer and Handsome Seattle. Mr. McGinty and Sir Dapper and Strawberry Road, they're all out and after the leaders on the corner now. It's Strawberry Road dashing to the lead from Fine Offer. Then Mr. McGinty beaten from Sir Dapper, but Strawberry Road, my goodness, he's a different horse today. He's going to walk in. Kiwi Slave coming from last, going to run second. Strawberry Road won it by 4 lengths.
After this, Strawberry Road settled some more doubts. Carrying green and gold with a boxing kangaroo rampant, he beat the best in Germany and France and England and North America. Next year, another Horse of the Year got there. No argument about Red Anchor. He was the best of his year.
As they came up by the 600 in a street cafe, about a length to Lord Camelot, El Dwayne's gone. In the centre there, battling on is King Phoenix and Red Anchor, and the outside of them from Mr. Ironclad, King Delamere, and then further back, Labrici, Riverdale. But Street Cafe, Clements kicked it away, a length and a half on the corner. Red Anchor's out after it from Lord Camelot. The 3-year-olds are clear. Red Anchor raced up the Street Cafe from Lord of Camelot and then King Delamere. Red Anchor took the lead, 100 to go from Street Cafe, battling back, and then Lord of Camelot. But the mighty Red Anchor's coming away to win the Cox Plate.
And a week after this, just to prove the point, he won the Victoria Derby.
This is the school. Well, that's what we call it anyway. The real school's just over there in Wilson Street. Moonee Pond Central, actually. A place of great learning, I'm sure. But its significance for us racing folk is that the eastern end of the building lines up exactly with the 600-metre peg here. And at the Valley, doesn't matter what race it is, the rule is you've got to be doing something at the school. You've got to get going here. You can't wait for the straight. And it was here in 1986 that Bonecrusher and our Waverley Star raced away from the field to slug it out, blow for blow, like a couple of heavyweights. From here, from the school to the post, that's the way it was. Inelegant, rash, dead honest. The best 2-horse war you've ever seen. The stuff of legends.
Our Waverley Star and Bonecrusher have bounded up.
And this is how the connections of our Waverley Star watched what once nearly was theirs.
Bonecrusher, they sprinted past the opposition. Drought moves up into third placing. He's 2 lengths away. Stewart's pulled the whip on Bonecrusher. Our Waverley Star's going better than Bonecrusher near the turn. Stewart riding desperately on Bonecrusher. Our Waverley Star leads him by about a length. They've cleared away from the opposition. Drought in third place, followed by Dinky Flyer and Drawn. Here's Bonecrusher raising another effort. The 2 New Zealanders turn for home with Bonecrusher, a narrow leader from our Waverley Star. The Filbert battling on. Bonecrusher and our Waverley Star, stride for stride from the Filbert. This is worth coming miles to see. The Bonecrusher on the outside. They hit the line. Bonecrusher beat our Waverley Star in one of the greatest races ever. Third placing to the Filbert. They were followed by Drought, then Dandy Andy, Dinky Flyer, Tristram Drawn, March Akita, Averetti, Society Bay, Romanov.
And number 2 is in the frame. The Big Red, and he's earned the title today. Number 2, Bonecrusher, ridden by G.M. Stewart, is first. Number 3, Our Waverley Star, L. O'Sullivan, second.
Good idea, Gary. was just about
He did look beaten, didn't he?
Yeah.
On the bend. Gary had to go for the whip first. It's unusual for a horse to respond like that, but he's a true champion, so there's no question.
You thought you'd won, did you?
We thought we won, and Bart Sinclair thought I won, and my own trainer thought we won. We're coming down, you see, and then, of course, they told us that number 2 won. So anyhow, that's racing.
I say how delighted I am to be asked to take part in this presentation for the Australia's greatest weight for age race. And congratulations to Moonee Valley in staging this magnificent meeting today. Can any of you recall a greater race than you saw today? What a magnificent finish. And for Russ Hins and other connections of those horses that weren't successful, other great horses have been beaten in this great race, and nobody should feel let down or disappointed by being beaten by a champion like Bonecrusher. And I express, I believe, the congratulations of all to the connections, to Peter Mitchell, to Gary Stewart and Frank Ritchie, owner, jockey and trainer. They've brought this horse over here and thrilled Melbourne's race crowds. Thanks for being here, and congratulations on behalf of all for a magnificent victory for a great horse. Well done.
And even in this crush, a man can have his private moments.
He's done this before. This horse can pull out something that I've said before, you can't ride or train into him. It's just, there's a turbocharge there, to quote an Australian pressman, that it just doesn't exist in other horses. He pulls out what appears not to be there and gets up. I don't remember a time that the horse has ever got to the front and been headed again. He's just something else.
Back in the dressing room, Sean Ritchie keeps repeating one word.
Gutsy. Oh Christ, this guy's $200 bucks.
One of the things that makes racing timeless is that, unlike so many other sports these days, it's still about losing with grace.
But neither of them disgrace themselves.
Not a bit. And I reckon your bloke proved one thing today. Mile and a half's not going to stop him. Because that was that was a 2,200 metre race today. Yeah. You know, and the pressure went on very early. Yeah. You know, so,
and the two of them, they wobbled the last bit.
Gone. Absolutely gone.
They were shagged both.
And you might even be able to put it down to the fact we've raced once or twice more than you. That might have made that little bit difference even though
Never stripped looking fitter for us.
No.
Never
no. Well, my horse has never been better. Yeah. Since he's been here, he's thrived. You know, he's just. Yeah. I felt today, if you beat us, you know, given the circumstances as the race, say you'd beaten us at length as it turned out, then I couldn't stand up and say anything cost me the race. You know, not a thing, because he's just never been better. And
well,
so
that's why we
if we've got anything on,
the horse was spot on. Yeah. Anyway, I'll tell you what, it's going to be. You know, I'll be glad to go run on the Fuji without Bonecrusher, I can tell you that.
Anyway, all right, mate, great. Thanks, Paul. Let we keep that Tuesday date.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's for sure. It's our shout.
Like ordering off the top shelf.
You're on.
Next day, it's back to rehearsals again. This time for Tokyo and the Japan Cup.
When you start training, of course, you always hope for a good horse. But you only dream of getting something like Bonecrusher. It just doesn't happen. They just don't come along, those sort of horses, to many people. I've been very fortunate that he's come into my life.
When you look back at the records and you see the horses that have won it, I think that speaks for itself. It's a race that is really, it's been a champion's race. Obviously, to win it, it was a great thrill, because we regard it unquestionably in this part of the world as the Australasian Racing Weight for Age Championship, no question about that. It was the greatest thrill, I think, of all of his wins that I've had, and he's had some fantastic wins. We've won 2 derbies with him and Tancred, and but the Cox Plate was just out of this world, no question.
This is it, they're racing. Imprimatur away very quickly over near the rails with Society Bay. Drought has begun well also.
Now let's have a look where Bonecrusher is back behind them at the rear as they settle down trying to get near the fence, and our Waverley Stars caught deep. Roman Artist and Dandy Andy took them out of the straight, a length and a half, Imprimatur and Society Bay deep. They were followed then by, in the centre of that bunch, March Chiquita drawn the rails. 2 lengths further back, the Filbert and Drought, a length to Waverley, our Waverley Star, who's still wide. 2.5 lengths then to Bonecrusher, followed by Dinky Flyer, Aberidi, and last of all, Tristram. At the 1400, Roman Artist, a length and a half in front now from Dandy Andy and Society Bay the outside. A length to March Chiquita and a length and a half drawn, tucked in on the fence from Imprimatur. Our Waverley Star still 3 deep in the race, and on the rails, the Filbert and Drought the centre. 2 lengths to Aberidi, Bonecrusher on its inside, 2 to Dinky Flyer and a length to Tristram. They've got 1100 to go. Roman Artist cutting out a fair pace, out a length and a half. Society Bay clear second now. On the rails, Dandy Andy and a half length to March Chiquita. 2 lengths to draw and having a good run from Imprimatur. Our Waverley Star will want to be far up. Here's Bonecrusher. He's pulled into the outside, shooting around them, and our Waverley Star's going with it. Aberidi at the head of the others with Drought, Dinky Flyer, the Filbert and Tristram. Here come the New Zealanders, our Waverley Star and Bonecrusher. They've raced to the lead, 600 out. Have they gone too early? 2 lengths to Drought, running up the third from Society Bay. They were followed then by Drawn under the whip at the head of the others, Dinky Flyer. But our Waverley Star, he got a half length to Bonecrusher. He's gone for the whip on Bonecrusher. 3 lengths to Drought, followed then by Dinky Flyer and Drawn. But the 2 great New Zealanders have come away on the turn. Our Waverley Star, a half length Bonecrusher. The big red won't give in. Drought running on. Bonecrusher responds to the whip. The roars of the crowd. He races up to our Waverley Star. 100 out. Bonecrusher, our Waverley Star. Stride for stride. Nothing in it. Our Waverley Star, the round. Bonecrusher, the outside. And Bonecrusher races into equine immortality. $1.5 million as he photo finishes our Waverley Star. Third is the Filbert, followed by Drought. Next is Dandy Andy, followed behind them by Dinky Flyer. Then Tristram, March Chiquita, Aberidi, Drawn, Society Bay, Imprimatur and Roman Artist. The crowd is roaring its head off. The judges call for the photo.
Yes, the crowd was roaring all right. But it isn't roaring here. This is where it all starts, with reedy-legged foals, ryegrass swaying in the wind. This is where a man can think quietly and dream a little.
Well, the only dream I can think of would be the dream of having a horse of my own that's good enough to win it. And if that should come to pass, well, then I'll be very happy to pass on to my maker.